I drew a red door. That's what saved an innocent man's life, not my words. I couldn't speak for 3 months after that day. Not my testimony. The trauma therapist said I was too young, too damaged, too unreliable. Just a crayon drawing made by an 8-year-old boy who saw something terrible and couldn't find the words to explain it. 12 years later, that drawing became the key piece of evidence that proved Marcus Webb didn't murder anyone, that the real killer had been free all along, that I was the only person who knew the truth, locked away in my child's memory, waiting for someone to finally see what I'd been trying to say. All along, my name is Noah Carter. I'm 20 years old now, and this is the story of how a red door destroyed everything. I thought I knew about that day. I was 8 years old when I saw the murder. At least, that's what everyone calls it now. Back then, in October 2013, I didn't have words for what I witnessed. I had sounds, a sharp crack that made birds explode from trees. I had images, a man falling backward into leaves. I had smells, something metallic mixed with the October dampness of Riverside Park. But I didn't have language. Not anymore. The words had locked themselves away somewhere deep inside me, hiding from what my eyes had seen. My mum found me 3 hours later. I was sitting under the slide at the playground, knees pulled to my chest, rocking. The police said I wouldn't speak, wouldn't look at them, just kept drawing circles in the dirt with my finger, over and over and over. They took me to the hospital, checked for injuries, found none, checked for shock, found plenty. Selective mutism, the doctor said. Trauma. The boy witnessed something, but his mind won't let him process it. Give him time, but the police didn't have time. They had a body in the park, James Morrison, 43, shot once in the chest. They had a witness, me, the only person who'd been there. And they had a suspect, Marcus Webb, Morrison's business partner, who'd been arguing with him publicly for weeks about money. They needed my testimony. They needed me to identify Marcus Webb as the shooter. They needed me to remember, but I couldn't. The first therapy session was a week after the shooting. Dr. Sarah Chen specialized in child trauma. Her office smelled like lavender and had soft lights that didn't hurt my eyes. There were toys everywhere, action figures, stuffed animals, a whole bin of art supplies in the corner. Noah, she said gently, sitting on the floor across from me, you don't have to talk if you don't want to, but I need you to know something. Whatever you saw, whatever happened, it's not your fault, and you're safe now. I didn't believe her. Safe didn't feel real anymore. Safe was before October 14th, before the park, before the red door. The police want to know what you saw, Dr. Chen continued. But I don't work for the police. I work for you. So we're not going to talk about testimony or court or any of that. We're just going to find ways for you to tell your story. Okay? She pushed the art supplies toward me. Crayons, markers, colored pencils, paper. Sometimes, she said, when words don't work, pictures can help. Would you like to draw for me? I stared at the crayons, at the blank paper, at the possibility of getting the images out of my head and onto something I could control. Slowly, I reached for a crayon. Red dot, I drew a door. The drawing didn't make sense to anyone at first. Dr. Chen showed it to my mother. My mother showed it to the police. The police showed it to the prosecutors handling Marcus Webb's murder trial. It's a door, Detective Rodriguez said, stating the obvious. Red door, no handle, no house around it, just A door. What does it mean? The prosecutor asked Dr. Chen. I don't know yet, she admitted. But it's what Noah drew when I asked him about that day. It's significant to him somehow. Is this enough for testimony? No, absolutely not. Noah isn't ready to testify. He may never be. Putting him on a witness stand right now would be re-traumatizing and unreliable. So they didn't use me. Didn't call me as a witness. My drawing went into the case file, marked as child's artwork, no evidentiary value. Marcus Webb's trial proceeded without my testimony. The prosecution built their case on circumstantial evidence, motive, money, dispute, opportunity, no alibi for the time of death, and forensic evidence, gunshot residue found on Webb's jacket. The defense argued contamination, coincidence, setup, but without a witness to contradict the prosecution's timeline, without someone who'd actually seen what happened. Marcus Webb was convicted of second-degree murder, 15 years to life. He maintained his innocence through the entire trial, through the sentencing, through 12 years in prison. I didn't kill James Morrison, he said at every parole hearing. I wasn't even in that park. Someone set me up. No one believed him, except me, because I knew something no one else did. Marcus Webb wasn't the man. I saw that day. The nightmares started immediately and never really stopped. For years, I'd wake up gasping, seeing the same fragments, the man falling, the birds scattering. The sound, it wasn't quite a gunshot, more like a door slamming. And always, the red door. My mum took me to therapist after therapist. Dr. Chen remained the constant, seeing me weekly even after I started speaking again 3 months after the incident. She kept all my drawings in a file, hundreds of them over the years, all variations of the same theme. Red doors. Always read doors. Why do you draw doors, Noah? She'd ask gently. Because that's what I saw. Tell me about the door. It was red, and it closed. Where was the door? In the park. What was on the other side? I couldn't answer that. The memory would fog up, hide itself, become unreachable. By the time I was 12, I'd stopped drawing doors, started trying to be normal, started pretending that October Day hadn't carved itself permanently into my brain. But the dreams never stopped, and neither did the guilt, because somewhere in my locked-away memory, I knew the truth. Marcus Webb hadn't killed James Morrison. I'd seen who did, but I couldn't remember, couldn't access it. And an innocent man was in prison because of what I couldn't say. Asterisk. Everything changed when Detective Sarah Okonkwo pulled my case file. It was March 2024. I was 19, finishing my freshman year at State University, studying psychology because Dr. Chen had once told me that understanding trauma might help me understand myself. Detective Okonkwo was new to the cold case unit. She'd requested all unsolved cases from 2010 to 2015, looking for patterns, missed evidence, anything that might generate fresh leads. Marcus Webb's case wasn't technically unsolved. He'd been convicted, was serving his sentence. But his persistent claims of innocence, combined with lack of direct witness testimony, made her curious. She opened the file, read through the evidence, looked at crime scene photos, and then she saw my drawing. A red door. She stared at it for a long time. Then she pulled up the crime scene photos again, looked at the park, the trees, the playground, the body location, and there, in the background of one photo, barely visible behind the yellow police tape, a maintenance shed. with a red door. Detective Okonkwo called Dr. Chen first, the child witness from the Morrison case. She said, "Noah Carter, is he still your patient?" "I can't discuss patients," Dr. Chen replied carefully. "I understand, but I need to speak with him. I think he saw something crucial that no one understood, something that could exonerate Marcus Webb." Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment. "Noah is an adult now. If you want to speak with him, you'll need to contact him directly. But detectives spent 12 years trying to move past that trauma. Be very careful how you approach this. Detective Okonkwo found me through my mother, called me at school. Her voice was kind but direct. Noah, my name is Detective Sarah Okonkwo. I'm investigating the James Morrison murder from 2013. I know you were a witness. I know it was traumatic. But I believe you saw something that day that could change everything about this case. Would you be willing to talk to me?" My hands were shaking when I agreed to meet her. We met at a coffee shop near campus. Neutral territory. Detective Okonkwo was younger than I expected, mid-30s, wearing jeans and a blazer instead of a uniform. She had kind eyes that reminded me of Dr. Chen. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as I sat down. "I know this isn't easy. What did you find?" I asked. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. She pulled out a folder. Inside were copies of crime scene photos and my drawing The Red Door, faded now, but still clearly recognizable. "This," she said, pointing to my drawing. "This door. Can you tell me why you drew it?" I stared at the crayon lines, at the memory frozen in wax and paper, because that's what I saw. That's what I remember. "Do you remember where you saw it?" "In the park, near where it happened." She pulled out a crime scene photo, pointed to the background. "Is this the door?" I looked, really looked. The maintenance shed, weathered wood, peeling paint, and a red door, slightly ajar. My breath caught. The memory shifted, tried to surface, pushed against the barrier I'd built to keep it locked away. "Yes," I whispered. "That's the door." "Noah, what was special about this door? Why did you draw it?" I closed my eyes, tried to let the memory come. Because it opened when, after the sound, after the man fell, the door opened. What came out of the door, Noah? And suddenly, like a dam breaking, I remembered. I was 8 years old, playing near the slide, when I heard voices arguing, 2 men. I couldn't see them clearly through the trees, but I could hear them. Angry voices, getting louder, then a third voice, calmer, coming from somewhere else. I moved closer, curious in the way children are, not understanding danger. I crouched behind a bench where I could see 2 men standing in a clearing. One was tall, wearing a grey jacket. The other was shorter, gesturing frantically. They were arguing about money, about betrayal, about someone named Marcus who had ruined everything. "You're going to pay for this," the shorter man said. "You and Marcus both. Thomas, you need to calm down." But Thomas didn't calm down. He pulled something from his jacket. Not a gun, it looked more like a phone. He pointed it at the taller man. "I'm calling the police," Thomas said. "I'm telling them everything. About the embezzlement, about the fraud, about how you and Marcus stole from me." The taller man, James Morrison, though I didn't know his name, then looked angry but not scared. "Go ahead. You have no proof." That's when the red door opened. I saw it clearly. The maintenance shed, maybe 30 yards away. The door opened slowly, carefully, and a figure stepped out, dressed in dark clothes, face covered with a ski mask. They had a real gun. My 8-year-old brain understood what was about to happen. I wanted to scream, to warn them, but my voice had frozen. The figure raised the gun, aimed at James Morrison's back. The shot was loud and sharp and wrong. James Morrison fell. Thomas screamed, and the figure in the mask ran not toward the crime scene, but away, deeper into the park, disappearing into the trees. Thomas stood frozen for maybe 3 seconds. Then he ran to the opposite direction, toward the parking lot, away from the body. I stayed hidden behind the bench, couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't process what I'd just witnessed. Someone had been waiting in that shed. Someone who knew where James Morrison would be. Someone who'd planned this. And it wasn't Marcus Webb. "Tell me what you remember," Detective Okonkwo said gently, watching me closely as the memory surfaced. I told her everything. The 2 men arguing, the red door opening, the figure in the mask, the shot, both men running. "The person you saw shoot James Morrison," Detective Okonkwo said carefully. "Was it one of the 2 men arguing?" "No, it was someone else. Someone who was hiding in the shed. Yes, waiting." She pulled out a photograph. "This is Thomas Shaw. He was James Morrison's brother. He called 911 that day, reported finding the body. Told police he'd just arrived at the park for a meeting with Morrison and found him shot. Is this one of the men you saw arguing?" I looked at the photo. Thomas' shoulder now, but I recognized the frame, the posture. Yes, he was there. He was arguing with Morrison before it happened. Did Thomas Shaw shoot James Morrison? No, he ran away after. He looked scared. Detective Okonkwo leaned back. "Noah, do you know why Marcus Webb was convicted? Because they thought he did it. Because Marcus Webb's fingerprints were found on the shed door, the red door, and gunshot residue was found on his jacket. The prosecution argued he hid in the shed, waited for Morrison, shot him, then tried to frame it as a random attack. My stomach dropped. But I saw who was in the shed. It wasn't Marcus Webb." "How do you know?" "You said the person was wearing a mask." Because I struggled to articulate what my 8-year-old self had observed. Because the person was smaller and moved differently. And Marcus Webb's fingerprints being on the door doesn't mean he was inside. It just means he touched the door. Detective Okonkwo smiled slightly. "Exactly. That's reasonable doubt. But juries are swayed by forensic evidence. Fingerprints on a murder weapon or, in this case, the door where the murderer hid, that's powerful. Combined with motive and no alibi, it was enough for conviction. So an innocent man went to prison because I couldn't remember this?" "No," she said firmly. "An innocent man went to prison because someone set him up very carefully, and because the real killer is still out there. Noah, you're not responsible for this. You were a traumatized child, but now you're an adult witness who remembers, and your testimony could free Marcus Webb. Will it be enough? Your memory, combined with new investigation into Thomas Shaw and whoever else was in that park that day?" "Yes, I think it will be." The investigation moved quickly once I gave my statement. Detective Okonkwo obtained warrants to reopen the case. They re-interviewed Thomas Shaw, who initially stuck to his story about arriving after the shooting. But when confronted with my testimony about the argument, he broke. "I didn't kill him," Thomas insisted. "Yes, I was arguing with James. Yes, I was angry. He and Marcus Webb had embezzled money from our family business. I'd finally gotten proof. I confronted James that day, but I didn't shoot him. When the shot came, I panicked. I ran. I thought if I stayed, police would think I did it. Why didn't you tell the truth during the trial? Because my lawyer said my presence at the scene would make me look guilty. We decided it was better to say I'd arrived after, found the body, called 911. I was trying to protect myself by letting Marcus Webb take the fall. Thomas looked ashamed. Marcus had embezzled money too. I thought maybe he did kill James. Revenge for James planning to expose the fraud. I didn't know an innocent man was being convicted. I just knew I wasn't guilty. But Thomas Shaw's confession didn't solve the case. It just confirmed what I'd seen. There was a third person. Someone who'd been waiting in the shed. Someone who'd killed James Morrison and let Marcus Webb take the blame. The question was, who? The answer came from an unlikely source. Marcus Webb himself. Detective Okonkwo visited him in prison. Told him about my testimony. About Thomas Shaw's confession. About the evidence being reviewed. I told everyone I was innocent, Marcus said, tears streaming down his face. 12 years. 12 years I've been saying someone set me up. No one believed me. We believe you now. But Marcus, we need your help. Who would have wanted James Morrison dead and you in prison for it? Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then, Elena Morrison, James's wife. Why? Because James was planning to divorce her. He'd found out she'd been having an affair with someone in the company. He was going to leave her with nothing prenup-covered infidelity. She'd lose the house, the money, everything. But if James died while they were still married, she'd inherit everything. And framing you, I was the obvious suspect. James and I had been fighting publicly about the embezzlement Thomas mentioned. Elena knew police would look at me first. If I was convicted, she'd be clear. Grieving widow who'd lost her husband to his greedy business partner. Do you know who she was having an affair with? I have suspicions. David Park, one of our junior partners. He was always around their house, always volunteering to help Elena with things. James made jokes about it, but I don't think he realized it was real until he found evidence. Detective Okonkwo pulled David Park's employee records, looked at his physical description, 5'9", slim build, 41 years old in 2013. She pulled up the crime scene photos, looked at the shed, the door, the angle of the shot. Then she pulled my drawing again, stared at the red door I'd drawn as an 8-year-old, trying to communicate what I'd witnessed. Noah, she called me. The person you saw come out of the shed. Can you describe their build? Height. I closed my eyes. Tried to remember. Not tall. Shorter than the man who got shot. Thin. Fast. Could you identify them if you saw them? I don't know. They wore a mask. What about the way they moved? Would you recognize that? It was a strange question, but I thought about it. Maybe they moved careful, like a cat, quiet. That detail, the way someone moved, became crucial. David Park was brought in for questioning. He denied everything. Denied the affair. Denied being in the park. Provided an alibi had been at work that day. Timesheets proved it, except Detective Okonkwo dug deeper. Found security footage from the office building. David Park had clocked in at 8 a.m., left for a meeting at 2:30 p.m., returned at 4:15 p.m. James Morrison was shot at 3:07 p.m. It was a business meeting, David insisted. I met a client at a coffee shop. Which client? He couldn't remember, couldn't provide receipts, couldn't give details. They searched his house, found nothing, searched his car, found nothing, but then they checked his phone records from October 2013, found texts between David Park and Elena Morrison, hundreds of them, including texts from October 14th. Elena, 12:47 p.m. James suspects. We have to do something. David, 1:03 p.m. I'll handle it. Trust me, Elena, 1:15 p.m. How? David, 1:22 p.m. Better if you don't know. Make sure you're at your sister's house all afternoon. Solid alibi. Elena, 1:28 p.m. What about afterward? David, 1:31 p.m. Marcus will take the fall. I've made sure of it. That was enough for arrest warrants. Elena Morrison was arrested first, charged as an accessory to murder. She broke immediately, confirmed the affair, confirmed she'd wanted James dead to keep the money, confirmed David Park had planned everything. He said he'd take care of it. She sobbed. He said no one would ever know. He'd studied Marcus's schedule, knew where to plant evidence, knew how to make it look like Marcus did it. I didn't know the details. I just knew James would be gone and we'd be together. David Park was arrested next, charged with first-degree murder. He didn't confess, demanded a lawyer, prepared to fight. That's when Detective Okonkwo told me, Noah, we need you to testify. Your testimony about the person hiding in the shed, combined with the physical evidence and the text messages, is what will convict him. Are you ready? I wasn't. I was terrified. But Marcus Webb had spent 12 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit, and I was the only person who could help free him. I'll testify, I said. The trial was in November 2024. I was 20 years old, 12 years older than the last time I'd been asked about what I'd seen. 12 years of therapy, of nightmares, of carrying the guilt of not being able to help sooner. Dr. Chen prepared me, taught me grounding techniques, reminded me I was safe, reminded me I was telling the truth. You're not that scared 80-year-old anymore, she said. You're a young man who survived trauma and found the courage to speak. Be proud of that. The courtroom was enormous and intimidating. The prosecutor was kind, walked me through my testimony gently. Noah, can you tell the court what you witnessed on October 14th, 2013? I told them everything. The two men arguing, the red door opening, the figure in dark clothes and a mask, the gunshot, the way the figure moved, careful, quick, like a cat. Did you see the shooter's face? No, they wore a mask. Can you describe their build? Shorter than Mr. Morrison, thin, maybe 5'9" or 5'10". The prosecutor showed me David Park. Is this build consistent with what you remember? Yes, the defense attorney cross-examined me aggressively. Mr. Carter, you were 8 years old. You couldn't speak for months after this incident. You've spent 12 years in therapy. How can you be certain your memories are accurate and not constructed from suggestion or imagination? I looked at him directly, because I drew the red door when I was 8, before anyone suggested anything, before I knew what a maintenance shed was or why it mattered. I drew what I saw because that's what my brain locked onto the door opening, the person coming out, That memory is real. But you can't identify my client as that person. I can't identify his face, but I can identify his build, his movement pattern, and the fact that someone was in that shed. Someone who wasn't Marcus Webb. Someone who'd planned this. And all the evidence points to your client. The defense attorney tried other tactics. Tried to discredit my trauma therapy. Tried to suggest I'd been coached. Tried to paint me as an unreliable witness. But the texts between David Park and Elena Morrison spoke for themselves. The forensic evidence of the setup spoke for itself. And my testimony, the testimony of the only actual witness, filled in the gaps the physical evidence couldn't. The jury deliberated for 9 hours. They found David Park guilty of first-degree murder. They found Elena Morrison guilty as an accessory to murder, and Marcus Webb, after 12 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit, was exonerated and released. I met Marcus Webb 3 weeks after his release. He was thinner than his photos, older, worn down by 12 years of wrongful imprisonment. But his eyes were kind when he looked at me. "Noah," he said, "I don't have words to thank you. I'm sorry I couldn't remember sooner. I'm sorry you lost 12 years because I couldn't stop." He held up a hand. "You were a child. A traumatized child. What happened to me wasn't your fault. It was David Park's fault. Elena Morrison's fault. A system that convicted me on circumstantial evidence. You're not responsible for any of that. But if I'd remembered sooner, you remembered when your brain allowed you to. Trauma doesn't work on convenient timelines. Dr. Chen told me about your drawings, about how you were trying to communicate the truth even when you couldn't speak. That 8-year-old boy did everything he could, and the young man you became finished what he started. That's not failure. That's courage," I cried. 12 years of guilt releasing in that moment. "What will you do now?" I asked when I could speak again. Marcus smiled. "Live. That's all I want. Just live freely. Maybe help other wrongfully convicted people fight their cases. Use what I learned. Make something good from something terrible. That sounds like a good plan. What about you?" Dr. Chen says, "You're studying psychology." "Yeah, I want to understand trauma. Want to help other kids like me who can't find words for what they've experienced. Want to make sure they don't spend 12 years feeling guilty like I did." "That's perfect," Marcus said. "We both get second chances. Me to live free. You to heal and help others heal. Maybe that's the ending this story deserves." I still dream about the red door sometimes, but now when I dream, I don't feel trapped by it. I understand what it means. It's not just a door, it's a symbol of truth hidden, waiting to be opened, of memory locked away until it's safe to surface, of a child who couldn't speak but found another way to communicate. Dr. Chen kept all my drawings, hundreds of red doors, spanning 12 years. She showed them to me recently, laid out in chronological order. You can see the evolution from crude crayon scribbles to more detailed sketches, the door gradually opening more with each drawing, as if my subconscious was slowly unlocking the memory. "Your brain was protecting you," she explained. "It knew you saw something traumatic. It locked the memory away until you were old enough, safe enough, ready enough to handle it." The drawings were breadcrumbs. Your 8-year-old self leaving clues for your future self. I've started volunteering with child trauma advocacy groups, helping other kids who've witnessed crimes, experienced trauma, lost their voices the way I did. teaching them that sometimes pictures speak louder than words, that healing takes time, that they're not broken, they're protecting themselves. Marcus Webb visits sometimes. We've become unlikely friends, the wrongfully convicted man and the child witness, who couldn't save him sooner, but eventually did. He says I gave him back his life. I say he gave me purpose. The truth is, we saved each other. David Park and Elena Morrison are both in prison. David got life without parole. Elena got 25 years. Thomas Shaw was granted immunity for his testimony, but lives with the guilt of staying silent during Marcus's trial. And me, I'm still healing, still learning to trust my own memories, still understanding that trauma doesn't make you weak surviving, it makes you strong. I graduated college last spring with a degree in psychology. I'm applying to graduate programs now. Want to specialize in child trauma and forensic interviewing. Want to develop better methods for helping child witnesses communicate what they've seen without re-traumatizing them. Because I know what it's like to have the truth locked inside you, to want desperately to help but not know how, to feel guilty for what you couldn't say. And I know what it's like when someone finally understands. When a detective looks at a crude crayon drawing of a red door and sees not just a child's artwork, but a witness statement waiting to be decoded. My name is Noah Carter. I'm 20 years old. 12 years ago, I saw a murder and couldn't speak about it, but I drew a red door, and that door opened more than just a shed in a park. It opened a case, freed an innocent man, caught a killer, and helped me understand that sometimes silence isn't emptiness, it's just truth waiting for the right moment to be heard.